In this video, I'll be showing all the various ways you can extrude objects in Blender. So I'll hit Shift A and add a cube, switch to Edit Mode, and then right-click, Subdivide, and I'll set the number of cuts to 3. Now, the most basic way to extrude is to select a face or a group of faces, then hit E, and you can extrude in or out. Or you can use the Extrude tool here on the toolbar. And you can also specify the amount if you want to extrude to a specific distance. And you can also extrude edges. If I hide the cube and add a plane, I'll set the size to 8, and switch to Edit Mode. Select this back edge and hit E and then Z and drag it up to about there. Then I'll select the edge here in the corner and bevel it, and increase the number of segments to about 20, then switch to Object Mode, right-click, and Shade Smooth. Then I'll add a basic material, set the color to gray, the metallic to 1, and the roughness to 0.3, and now I have a backdrop that I can use for a product rendering. And you can also extrude vertices, so I'll hit number 7 on the number pad to switch to top view, then hit Shift A and add a plane, and set the size to 2, switch to Edit Mode, Vertex Selection, then right-click and go to Merge Vertices and choose Collapse. And that will leave me with a single vertex. So now I can hit E and then Y and drag over to about here, then hit E and X and drag out in this direction, then hit E and drag over here somewhere. And now I can select these two vertices, hold down Control and Shift, and hit B, and I can bevel these corners. And I'll set the segments to 12, then switch to Object Mode, right-click, and convert to Curve. And now over here in the Curve Data Properties, in the Geometry section, I can set the depth to something like 0.06 and the resolution to 8, and now I have a pipe. So that's all good stuff, but there are other ways to extrude that are a little more advanced. Now, you already know about this Extrude tool here, and if you hover your cursor over it, it says Extrude Region. So it will extrude whatever face or group of faces that you select. And it will extrude them as a single group of connected faces. But if you click and hold your mouse button, you see there are other options here. You can extrude region, manifold, along normals, individual, and to cursor. So if you wanted to extrude these two faces down into the cube, make a notch in the side, Extrude Region isn't going to work very well. I mean, you could do it, but then you have to delete these faces and do a bunch of cleanup work. So a better option would be to Extrude Manifold, which will allow me to extrude cleanly into the cube. And if I come up here and turn on snapping and set the snap target to edge, now I can extrude down and snap to an edge. Just make sure you have dissolve orthogonal edges enabled. If I disable it, you see it leaves these faces here, which is no good. So I'll turn it back on, and now I can continue extruding and snapping to edges. Or I can choose vertex and do the same thing. And then I can switch to Object Mode, apply a mirror modifier, cross the Z-axis, and set bisect to Z, and I can start making an interesting shape. Now, I'm going to come back to extrude along normals in a minute, and move on to Extrude Individual. This option allows you to extrude a group of faces, so I'll select this one, then hit Shift G and choose Coplanar, and that will select all these top faces that lie in the same plane. And then I'll extrude up, and it looks like it did the exact same thing as Extrude Region, but now if I select these faces, I can move them apart. Or with the faces selected, I can hit the period key and choose Individual Origins, and then I can scale the faces and create something like this. Then hit the period key, switch back to median point, and then scale them out like this. And then maybe switch to Extrude Region and extrude them up, or whatever you want to do. And this last option down here at the bottom, Extrude to Cursor, is kind of a weird one, and it's a little tricky to use. But what you need to do is select the face that you want to extrude, then switch to Extrude to Cursor. Then I'll hit the number 1 key on the number pad to switch to front view. And I'll place my cursor up here, just above where the selected face is located. And then if I left click, you see it extrudes up to where my cursor is. And now I can continue moving my cursor and click to extrude, then move and click again and again, until I get the extrusion that I need. And this would work well if I had a reference image behind the model. If I was making something like a coffee mug or something with a handle, I could basically trace over the image using this Extrude to Cursor option. And now I'll come back to Extrude along normals. And I'll hit number 1 on the number pad to switch to front view, and then Alt-Z to get into X-ray mode. And I'll select this ring of faces and hold down Shift and select this row of faces. And now I can extrude directly out from the face normals. And then maybe I'll scale them down a little. Then go back to front view, Alt-Z for X-ray mode. Select these 2 rows in the middle and extrude them in and scale them down a little. Then switch to object mode, add a bevel modifier and set the amount to 0.005, and add a subdivision surface modifier and set the viewport levels to 3. Then right click and shade smooth. And you can start creating some interesting objects just by extruding. Now there are a couple more extrude options, but they're not here in the Extrude tool. If you select a face and then hold down Alt and hit E, that will bring up this pop-up menu. And you see these first 4 options are the same as the Extrude tool, but there are 2 other options down here at the bottom. So I'll select these 4 faces on top, then hold down Alt and hit E, and I'll choose Extrude Repeat. And it does this weird thing where it shoots out to the side, so I'll set the X and Y offsets to 0 and set Z to 1. And now you see I have a 1 meter extrusion that's repeating 10 times. And I can reduce the amount of steps and change the step height. And I also have this scale adjustment. So this tool would be useful if you were making something like a building and you wanted all the floors to be the same height, or if you were making some type of object with equally spaced segments. This will be a good way to quickly block out your base mesh. And this last one is the spin option, which is basically the same as the spin tool here in the toolbar. So I have a cylinder here and I want to create a pipe that bends and loops around. So I'll click on the spin tool and you see it displays this blue arc here, which lets you know the direction that the selected face will be extruding. And it's blue because it will be extruding around the Z-axis. If I switch to X, it's now red because it will be extruding around the X-axis. And if I select Y, it's now green because it will be extruding around the Y-axis. And this is the direction that I want for this first extrusion, so I'll hit the number 1 key on the number pad to switch to front view. And now I need to move the 3D cursor because the spin tool uses the 3D cursor as its axis of rotation. So wherever the cursor is located, it will extrude the selected face around that point. So I'm going to turn on snapping and set the snap target to grid. And now if I hold down the Shift key and the right mouse button, I can move the cursor and snap it to the grid. So I'm going to place it right about here and then turn off snapping. And now I'll select the top face of the cylinder and then click and drag to create the pipe bend. And if I hold down the Control key, I can snap to 5-degree increments. So I'll extrude it up until I get to 90 degrees, which you can see here in the spin menu. And I can continue to extrude further by adjusting this angle if I want. but I'll leave it at 90, and I can also increase or decrease the steps if I want more or less geometry, but I'll leave it at 12. The auto merge option is useful if I do a complete 360-degree angle. It will merge this face with the bottom face here so that you won't have any overlapping geometry. The Use Duplicates option is interesting. It makes every step into its own individual face. The Center X setting will allow you to change where the axis of rotation is located, so you can adjust the location of the pipe bend if you want. And the Axis X setting will let you adjust the bend so it comes out at an angle instead of straight. But I'll leave it at 0 and switch to Top View and Extrude Region, turn on snapping, and extrude out straight to about here. Then I'll select the Spin tool and switch the axis to Z, and I'll hold down Shift and the right mouse button to set the 3D cursor location. Then turn off snapping and click and drag to create the pipe bend. And I'll hold down the Control key to snap to 5-degree increments. And I want to bend it around 180 degrees, but I also want it to angle down. And if I try to adjust the Axis X setting, you see the pipe gets really distorted. So I'll undo that, and I'll extrude it out 90 degrees. And accept it. Then I'll select the face and extrude it another 90 degrees. And I can adjust Axis X to about 0.25 and Z to about negative 0.75. And you see it's angling down now. So I'll accept that. Then I'll switch to Extrude Region, select the face, hit number 1 to switch to front view, and extrude down to about there. And now I'm at this odd angle, but I can continue creating the pipe by switching the transform orientation to normal, then switch to top view, select the spin tool, and I just need to position the 3D cursor so it's even with the end of the pipe, and then move it over to about there, then switch to the X-axis and extrude out another 90-degree curve. And it isn't looking that great, but I can adjust the Center X setting to get the shape looking a little better. Then adjust the Axis Y value to get the face aligned. And that's looking pretty good. So I'll extrude another straight length, and then switch back to the top view, and I'll move the 3D cursor to about here. And then I'll hold down Alt and hit E, and I'll choose the spin option from the menu. And it's basically the same thing, it's just a little more automatic. Instead of having to manually drag out the extrusion, it's already done for me. I just need to adjust the settings here. So I'll set the angle to 90 degrees, and I can adjust the Center X value to increase or decrease the amount of the bend. And then I can continue extruding to create an interesting pipe structure. So that's about it for extruding. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and post them below. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.